Welcome to this TechAbility webinar on accessible photography. Please press subscribe underneath the video if you want more of this content. And if it was useful, please hit the like and leave us any feedback or questions in the comments. Okay, welcome everyone to Accessible Photography webinar by TechAbility. So I'm Neil Harrod-Beck and I'm joined with Phil McIntyre as well. And as I said before, if you've got any questions, then feel free to ask them as we go along, and we will take you through the slides. So today we're going to show you some different options for accessible photography. Remember that some of these may require some technical knowledge. Others, if you're at a college or school or organization where you have security, you might need to talk to your IT team for permissions and things like that. Today isn't an exhaustive list. Please let us know if there's something you don't feel has been covered that might benefit you, and we can always come back to things and spend more time on them if that will help you. Okay, so starting off with iPads and switches. So with iPads, you can connect any of the switches, so either Bluetooth or wired, and then you can go into settings, accessibility, and switches. You can add the switch and then map the action to volume up or volume down, which is just a generic shortcut that's available on iPads. You can also, as Phil pointed out to me, you can also use the volume button on a headset if you're connected, if you just need a remote. So I've got a short demonstration video on how that looks. Okay, so here we are going down to accessibility options on the left-hand side. And then we're going to switches. And then we add new switch. And then we hit external. And this is when I'd hit the switch button. And it lets me call it a name. So I'm going to call it blue. And then hit save. And that switch is set up. I can then add what its action is. So I'm going to go to increase volume. And I can just go back a screen, make sure that switch control is turned on, and then I can go to the camera, and then when I hit the switch, now, and it'll take a picture. Okay, so that's how to set it up. I used a device called Tapio today to set up a wired switch. So that's Tapio, but you can also get lots of Bluetooth switches as well, or connect up to them.
Neil, is this an insight into your hobby, taking photos of tennis balls?
No, I just thought, what's a good object I can take a photo of, and everything else seemed quite boring, so I thought I'd choose a tennis ball. Haven't played tennis in years actually. So next we can talk a little bit about GoPro. So these are quite useful because they've got voice activation built in. It only works on certain models, so you've got to make sure you get the right one. I've got a list of those models as well. It can wake from sleeping as well, which is a bit different to some other devices, meaning that you can completely access it with your voice. You can also use communication aids to operate it, by having them pre-programmed with the phrases that you need. You need to be careful of background noise. If it's too windy or there's too many people talking in the background, that might affect the quality of it. So this is the list of what devices they're available on. And of course, we'll share the slides around so you can find these out. If you're on a bit of a budget, then you can go for something like the Hero 7 White, and that's still quite a recent model with voice control built in. Some of the other ones are quite expensive because they are very robust action cameras and quite high-end, high-def ones as well. So there are 11 standard GoPro voice commands that are available over all of those, and then there are some extras that are on different models. So you can start recording, stop recording, time lapse. You can take a photo, you can take a burst of photos, and you can turn the GoPro off. with the device I've got, which is the GoPro 7, you also get to turn the GoPro on as well. So I've just got a short video of that to show you.
Okay, so I'm going to take you through using the voice activation feature on the GoPro. So this is only available on certain models. I've got the GoPro Black 7 here. It's also available on the pretty much all the GoPro Blacks, so that's 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. But then if you go back a bit earlier, it's also available on the Hero 7 in white, silver and black, on the GoPro Max, GoPro Fusion, Hero 5 Session, Hero 2018 and Remo. And I'll make sure that I include a link for that as well for you to have a look at. So let's turn this on. Okay, so we can check if the voice activation is on or off by scrolling down from the top. And if this first symbol here is blue, then it's on. So that's it off, that's it on. We can also go into preferences. We go down to voice control here. We've got voice control on. You can wake on voice. Now, wake on voice, you have to leave it in a kind of low power mode. So it's worth noting that that will drain down the battery. I suppose you could get around that with connecting up to a power pack or something like that. Language, English UK at the moment, but you can change that to lots of different languages, French and German, and some different accents of English, quite a big range there. At the bottom here, it's got this useful commands list. So if you press on that, it'll give you all the different commands you can do along here. So let's go back to the main screen. Okay, so let's say GoPro take a picture. Okay, it's taking a picture. If we turn it off as well, we can say GoPro turn on, and it'll turn on. There you go. Okay, so
that was the GoPro. I tried it with a communication device earlier, communication aid, and it did pick it up. Although some communication aids don't really say GoPro very well, so you might need to work with the pronunciation on those. So next, I'm going to talk a little bit about Androids. So you can use voice activation on Androids. It requires Android version 5.0 or later. I've got a useful link there that will take you through the steps of how to enable voice access. And just make sure that when you go through the options, you download the language pack, and then you can also use this offline. And essentially, you can use Hey Google and take a photo.
All right, get ready.
There we go. And I left my phone on, so it actually did that. You can also say take a selfie as well. And the difference between that will be the front-facing or the rear-facing camera. We've got a full list of commands there if there's other things you want to do with your voice. If you want more advanced to control more things on the screen than just taking a photo, there's a command called show grid. And show grid will bring up a grid system, and you can pick a number along there. If you need it more accurate, you can do more squares. If you want it less accurate, you can use fewer squares, and that'll mean that you can go through and navigate your phone. If you've got a Samsung phone, you'll first need to tap installed services and then find voice access in that menu and then tap on. It's a little bit different for Samsung phones. And if you're having difficulties with any of that, there's a useful article that takes you through the steps kind of blow by blow. You can also check out another article on how to control your Android device entirely with your voice, and that'll give you more details. And for me, actually, using the command take a video didn't work for me without using the grid function. So I'd be interested to see if it works for you. Yeah, had to kind of find a workaround for that. I think photos are generally used more often now.
Should probably,
Okay,
Neil, sorry to interrupt, mention at this point, you'll be seeing a lot of links in this presentation. And what we'll do is we'll send it out to everyone who's attended, because those links will take you straight to the things Neil is telling you about. If you're watching the recording, then we'll put the links in the comments underneath the YouTube video. Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. So we can do the same with Apple devices. A little bit more simpler because you can just go to settings, accessibility, and then voice control. You can then, once you've got this set up, say open camera. Then you've got a choice of 2 different ways, and this is depending on who's going to use it. So first of all, you can say show numbers, and that's a bit like the grid option that we were saying earlier. And it puts numbers by each of the options you can choose. And in my case, it was choose 6 was associated with take a picture. But check the number on your device. I know on some versions it's different. Or you can just say turn up volume. And as we were talking before, that's a shortcut to take a picture. So that might be the easiest for whoever you're working with. I've included some guides on there, taking photos using Siri and using shortcuts to automate photos in Siri. The problem is with Siri is if you say take a picture, it'll take you into the picture, into the photo app, but then won't actually take the picture. So then you have to use your hand. So that defeats the point of it a little bit. So one workaround for that is to use shortcuts. So with Siri, you can activate certain shortcuts and it will take you through step by step. It's a little bit more complicated, but for the right person, that might work for them. So voice activated for Windows as well. Best way I found to do this is using Dragon Naturally Speaking. So this is dictation software, but it also means you can control your computer with different commands. So for those of you not familiar with Dragon, you start off by saying a wake up command, so wake up, or you can click on it. And then once you've done that, you can say press Windows, camera, press enter, and then you'll be in the camera app. And then to take a photo, you just say press enter. You can remap these to a different command. So you could put all 3 of those earlier commands into one command if you wanted to be even more efficient and make it even more user-friendly. But again, that's quite advanced. And that's how to do it in Dragon. I checked out the voice selfie app just to see if this was any better than the inbuilt methods within Google Play. I've left the link up there that will take you to the app. It's quite a simple app, quite a simple interface really. You can choose the trigger phase, which is the picture on the right hand side of this screen now. So you can choose to either have it as voice selfie, take my photo, take my picture, hey, take a selfie, or you can set your own phrase as well, which might be quite a good function for some learners. You can have it as selfie or front facing, timer, flash. You can choose what that's set on by default. You can choose to have a burst setting, so it will take a number of photos and choose the best one. You can change the screen brightness, and it's free as well. So it's a really simple app. The upside is the simplicity. The downside is that it's only the trigger phrase, which can be done by voice. So if you wanted to do more than that, you wouldn't be able to use in this app. It would literally just be there just to take photos. I tried to find out a similar one on Apple devices as well. So for iPhones and iPads, Hey Camera app was the best one that I found on the Apple App Store. You can use the voice commands to take a photo, start, stop a video recording, reverse the camera. So that means switching it between forward facing or rear facing, and you can enable or disable the camera flash. Voice works offline on iOS 13 and higher, which is good, and Siri shortcuts are available for taking a photo or starting a video recording. And Hey Camera is controllable using Siri if you're already using that, and it's completely free as well. So I think this probably solves the issues that we found within the inbuilt ones where it can be quite tricky to use your voice. One I hadn't even thought of before, but I thought to check, was the Amazon Alexa Show. So I've got a couple of links on there that will take you through to it. But just so you know, you can use an Amazon Alexa Show to take your own pictures. I was quite impressed actually with the fact that you could not only take pictures, but also you can say, Alexa, set up my photo display. You can say, show a particular birthday album or photo album. You can say, show photos of this day. You can even say who you want to send this photo to as well. So some good advanced features on there. And that all connects up through Amazon Photos. So I think you need to work out how you have an account for that. Phil, you can talk a little bit about DSLR.
Yeah, so sorry, we probably should have put the proper title in, shouldn't we? Digital SLR cameras. So we're thinking here about higher end cameras, which might have a higher price tag, but a lot of learners might want to access these cameras if they're doing a photography course, but they maybe don't have the physical ability to be able to press the shutter. So often there's a kind of a programmable mode on these cameras, and there's lots of settings. If you've ever been into the settings of one of these cameras, it's a minefield, and you can get totally lost in there. And I'd say this is something that you always need the manual for, is one of these cameras. But one thing that I've done effectively in the past is to create a remote for someone who can't reach out to press the shutter button. You can get these plug-in remotes, and basically it's a wire that plugs into the side of the camera, and a photographer would use it to stand back and press the button. So that might solve it for some people, that they just need something that maybe they can hold in their lap rather than having to reach out. But as well, if you want to, and you're happy with a soldering iron or unscrewing things, you can take one of these remote switches, pull it apart, and inside it's basically 3 bits of metal that press down onto each other. And you can wire in a switch socket that would be used for an accessibility switch, and then it becomes a switch accessible camera. So it's not fully switch accessible. All you can do is take the photo, but it could be, for instance, if someone can't hold it, it could be mounted on a mounting system, which we'll get to in a bit, on their wheelchair. But then they could use a head switch, say, if they use that to take the photo once they've positioned everything in the right place. So the remote is about £10. So if you're happy taking things apart, it's worth a go. But what I found is you can buy the official Canon ones, which are all nice and small and sleek. They're more expensive. The cheaper ones, which are about a tenner, are bigger, but it gives you more room to get the cables and the soldering in. So it's always worth, in this case anyway, going cheap and seeing if you can do that. So if you're using access switches, that's maybe a way to go if students want access to higher end cameras. That works on Canon cameras, but there's similar remotes for Nikon and other high end cameras as well.
Phil, Max has asked, are there any videos showing how to adopt the controller?
No, Max, sorry about this. I was searching for some photos that I had of the process I went through to do that, to end up with the picture that's on the screen, but they're really blurry. So maybe I need to create that, or just drop me an email and I'll send you the blurry ones.
Thank you.
Great. And if anyone else wants to know about that, please let us know, because if there's enough demand for it, then we'll spend a little bit more time to go through it. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about communication aids now. Communication aids are great because they allow different access methods, whether it's switches or eye gaze or direct access. They also give features such as audio feedback, and allow quite a lot of customization with how you access the cells within the communication aid. We also need to question why use a different device if the student also needs a communication aid. So why would we have a separate camera device when it can all be inbuilt into the same device? Sometimes there might be reasons, but generally it's good to have that option all built in. So today we're going to focus on the Grid 3 and Dynavox, which are two of the major ones. Let us know if there's any others that you want us to talk about, but those are the main two, and they'll give you a good idea of what's out there. So first of all, for the Grid, I am actually jumping back a step from where I started. I realized that once I'd opened the Grid, I had to go back into the settings to make sure that I chose which camera. So on the right hand side, there's a menu that shows me going into settings, then computer, and then looking on the right hand side at devices. So under the devices, you can choose a front facing camera, which I don't have on this laptop, and then a rear facing camera. So I've chosen that one as the HD webcam, and then it works from there. So you can add photo taking gallery to existing grid sets. So you don't necessarily need a separate grid set for this. You can add it, and sometimes they might already exist in that grid set, so it's worth checking if that's already available. So this is more of a reference slide than anything else, so you can go through some of the most useful grid sets for it. First of all, to mention, it isn't this complicated because the camera app right at the top is by default found in the accessible apps within the Grid. So at the moment you've got the Grid, you've got the different default grids there, camera is already in there. There's also one that's set up more for using voice within the Grid. There's a simple camera, which is one cell. So the whole page is literally just the viewfinder, and you just push one button and it takes the picture, as simple as it could be. There's also different ways of presenting as well, which is a big part of it. So there's a photo slideshow grid. There's another photo display with comments and story, and I'll talk a little bit more about that one on the next slide. There's also pictures with comments around it. One for the GoPro, which links, as we said earlier, it will give those commands to operate the GoPro. And also a photo editor with Windows Photos. Now, I had to go with this, and it's quite advanced. So you'd have to actually learn what buttons to use in what screen. So definitely not an easy one. The pictures you can see here on the right hand side, that's what the default camera grid looks like. And below that is what the camera app looks like. So quite a nice simple interface with not many buttons there. Just back, a shutter button, one to change the camera front or rear, and then another to jump to the gallery. So just to get thinking about how we use this with some students, this is a bit more of a way to make use of the photos once we've taken them. This is the grid set that I said earlier, which is photo display with comments and story. So it starts off with the central picture there with these are my cats, Jedi and Ewok. So you can talk to someone about the photo that you've just taken. You can also then talk about things around that photo. So the example here is I want to go and play with the cats. I like them so much. Remember when Jedi fell off the tower, things like that. So it really brings those photos to life, and it starts them as a motivation tool as well, because some learners, when we're first starting with communication aids, they need that interest or something that they really want to share. So this is a really good one for that. Tobii Communicator 5, it's a little bit differently laid out, but we can see it on the right hand side there. Those are the default apps. Again, you can remove these apps and you can make them customizable, so you can make that screen as simple as you want. The camera one there is the third row down, just circling it with my cursor there. And we've got some links there on how to use the camera and accessing the camera photos. But I can show you what it looks like. So once we go into the camera, this is what it looks like. And you've got a very simple take photo. You can bin the photos, and then if you click on the right hand side, you can go to the gallery. So again, quite simple. Okay, so that was communication aids. We're going to talk a little bit about Switch Driver 6 now, which is a free piece of software. It's available from Smartbox, and it means that you can remap any keyboard or mouse switches, actions to switches, and this is available on PC and computers. So you'd need a physical device because switches don't plug straight into a computer. You need a switch adapter, but then once you've got that, you can reprogram things. And why this is useful is because this means that any app that you can use with a keyboard, so any photography app you can use with a keyboard, you can then use Switch Driver 6 to recreate. So it has a PDF manual available from that download as well. So this is a really good way of adapting any apps that you want really on your PC or computer. Your phone companion, this is a new one on me, but I tested it and tested it out with my phone earlier. It's a way of connecting your phone to your Windows computer. And some of the things they say you can do are making and receiving calls, accessing your favorite apps, read and reply to text messages, sharing files, and a few more other things as well. But really our focus today to do with photography is it's a really good way of, if you've got your phone being the accessible device to take the photos, you can then access it on the computer, which might be a better way to share it and edit it and things like that. So you'd need to set up software on both your phone and on your computer. So I've put the two links in there, the one to the Google Play Store and the one to the Microsoft App Store as well. You need a PC running Windows 10 May 2019 update or later, Android device using Android 7. Your phone and your PC both need to be connected onto the same Wi-Fi, which might be an issue if you're in a college or an organization where your phone isn't on the Wi-Fi. And it will take you through the steps and it will take you to this page here. And I've included that just in case you need it. Okay. So Phil, you're going to talk a little bit about mounting.
Yeah, sure. So as alluded to earlier, we're thinking now about people who aren't able to maybe hold the camera physically themselves and how we can put it in a position where they could take a photo. So if there's if someone's using a wheelchair and you can mount the camera to their chair, if they have a powered chair that can tilt, and obviously all powered chairs can turn and move forward and backward, it's almost like an accessible camera control, even though the camera is fixed. The tricky thing is a lot of powered wheelchair users, obviously, your zoom is going forward and your zoom out is going backwards and panning is going side to side. The tricky thing often is moving up and down. So if people's chair has a tilt, they're able to do that, to move up and down. If not, it might be that they need assistance to reposition the camera. But ways to do that that have been successful for us in the past, the arms on the right-hand side of the screen with the switches on, they're Manfrotto arms, and the clamps are really strong and the arms are really strong, and they're designed for mounting switches. But what you can do is remove that switch from the top, and then the bracket that's above it replaces the switch, and then it has the standard tripod screw that goes into a camera on it. So you can put any camera that has a screw hole in the bottom, which is most cameras. So even if it's a little point and shoot style camera, most of them have it, but up to a big DSLR. And then the arm can be positioned so the camera's in the right position for the individual. They're called universal switch mountings. If someone wants to use a phone to take a camera, then you can get, phone to take a photograph as a camera, then you can get little clips that, again, they've got the tripod screw in the bottom, so they'll mount onto this arm, and then you can clamp the phone in it. Now, there are hundreds of different ones out there, so I've put on one that is from Manfrotto, and they're the people that make the arm, because I know they make good kit. But you can buy these sort of things on eBay for £4 or £5. You just need to be careful and make sure it's big enough to clamp the phone in so the phone doesn't ping out. but again, that can be positioned. The other thing you can often get is sort of an all-in-one clamp like this. They've generally got a big squeezy grip, and then it might have a snake style arm, and then you can clamp the camera in that. Sometimes they work, but I wouldn't always recommend them for photography, because the arm is one of those bendy arms. If someone's moving around in a wheelchair, or just if they shuffle a bit, then it sends the camera and makes it all wobbly. So you don't get good quality photos. What you need is something that's really more rock solid. So the Pixie clamp, the link will take you to it, but there's loads out there. Just put in phone clamp for photography or something into eBay, and it'll show you loads. Okay, next slide, please, Neil. And going to upscale here, thinking about, again, those DSLR type cameras, there's links here to a couple of projects which made these high-end cameras fully accessible, and they went about it in a slightly different way. But these were both for people who couldn't access the controls of the camera themselves, and they needed to use switches or to control all the elements of the camera. So instead of just doing a kind of shutter control like we saw earlier, these will do zoom, they will do pan and tilt to move the camera about, and one of them will access some of the settings on the camera itself. The bottom one, the Zocust, you might have seen featured on the BBC TV programme called, I can't remember, but basically that was making products accessible for people and with disabilities. But the one up the top doesn't work on hardware, it works more on a software and plugs in to the camera and accesses the software that way.
Great, thanks, Phil. And I think what you can see from today is we've got a real range of options for you, right from the devices you already have, where you can have those settings that are already built in, right the way up to these very, kind of quite complicated ways of doing things. We need a few engineers, don't we, on the call, I think. Okay, so we're coming to the end of the webinar now. If there's any questions that you want to ask, now's a really good time. If there's anything you want us to go through that we have gone through already, then please let us know. I'm thinking kind of future ideas that we can cover that are related to this. One of them is streaming, so using something like Twitch to stream. We can do something on animation, quite similar, and do some kind of stop motion, especially with those kind of iPad settings that we were learning about earlier and using the switches. We can cover access to social media, and also just let us know if there's any devices we missed or any students needing further assistance beyond what we've covered today. So yeah, you can get in touch with us, techability@natspec.org.uk for our email. Follow us on Twitter @tech_ability1. And we've got a few minutes, so if there's anything you want me to go back through, anything you want me to demonstrate, any questions you've got, then please let us know. We'd also love to know what you're going to take away and use. Is there anything today that you've seen that you think, I want to take that and use it with a student or an individual? Then yeah, please let us know.